Okay, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6 o'clock straight up, and we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Irick O'Neill. I'm the outreach coordinator for Kitsap County Public Works Road Division. I'd like to welcome everyone to this presentation meeting tonight for the Lemolo Shore Drive traffic study. This evening, Mr. Jeff Shea, manager for the Traffic and Transportation Planning Division, is going to facilitate a presentation on that traffic study. I'll turn it over to Jeff here shortly. I'd like to welcome some other panelists that have joined us on the call this evening. I'd like to welcome Commissioner Gelder on the call. Public Works Director Andy Nelson is joining us. Assistant Public Works Director Joe Rutan is also on the call, as is City of Fallsville staff Diane Lenius and Josh Rains. So welcome to all the panelists. Before we get started, I want to go through a couple of housekeeping notes or slides, if you will. Here we go. This meeting is being recorded. We will upload a copy of the recording to our project page. The link is there on the screen, and I'm hoping to have that uploaded and available tomorrow morning. During the presentation, all attendees will be muted to ensure audio quality. Title 6 ADA notice, interpreter and translation services are available, and accommodations for persons with disabilities are also available. Kitsap, please contact Kitsap 1 if you are interested in those services. We're going to have Mr. Shea facilitate the presentation, as I mentioned, and the question and comments section will be at the end of the presentation. In order to ask a question, there's for internet, for those that are joining on your computer, there's two options. One is you can click the raise your hand feature, signaling that you would like to ask a question or comment, and we will enable your microphone and call upon you to speak at the appropriate time. The second option is to type a question into the Q&A dialog box here on Zoom. For those that are dialing in on your phones, if you dial *9 on your keypad, that will signal that you'd like to make a comment. We'll call the last 4 digits of your call-in number, and you'll be able to ask a question or comment at that time. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Shea, and again, thank you everyone for joining us.
Again, my name is Jeff Shea. I want to also offer my welcome to the study review this afternoon or this evening. What I'd like to go over briefly is to hopefully give you a better understanding of the traffic study that we did. I know it's available. I hope some of you have read it and looked through it. In the study, we go through what we look at for the traffic, the road features that are there. And then what we did is we came up with a few alternatives. Now the alternatives are just a few things that we brainstormed. It's not a definitive list, but what we did is we came up with some pros and cons of each one. We'd like your comments and questions on those alternatives, better ones maybe, or alternatives, or different versions, derivatives of each one. So our study went from the Fallsville city limits to State Route 305. That distance is just over 2 miles long, and I would like to point out that in our study, we took into consideration Fallsville's pedestrian and bike improvements along Fjord, and also the new roundabout being built on SR 305 in Johnson, which will include a tunnel and a shared use path that will continue down from State Route 305 to Lemolo Shore. Also, the Sound Olympics, or the STO, is planned to go along the Lemolo Shore Road. This trail system connects Bainbridge Island to the Olympic Peninsula with a proposed separated trail. Wrong buttons. Lemolo Shore Drive has three fairly distinct roadways defined by their shoulders. The road itself is fairly flat with some horizontal curvature along its length. From Fallsville to Pedestrian, it is just over a half mile, and a significant length of it is right next to the embankment with Liberty Bay. After Pedestrian, the shoulders narrow a little and run for less than a half a mile to Tukwila. The final mile or so to State Route 304 has little to no shoulder, and what shoulder there is gravel. Another major challenge for this last section of the road is that there are two culverts that are very deep. These will be very expensive to deal with for any type of widening project. This segment of Lemolo Shore has been on our prospective shoulder improvement project list for many years. The high cost of the culvert work has made it difficult to get it on the Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP as we call it. Roads perform two main functions: mobility and land access, and depending on how much of each of those functions determines their federal functional classification. Lemolo Shore is classified a major collector and is shown by the red line in the chart. And also, as the chart shows, local roads have more of the blue shading, denoting more land access. And on the top of the chart, the arterials have more white shading, which denotes more mobility. Collector roads have more of a mix of both mobility and land access. And in general terms, the collectors collect traffic from local roads and take them to the arterials. Arterials are generally designed for higher volumes of traffic, including trucks, wider lanes and shoulders, painted center lines, fewer access points, and generally higher speeds. Collector roads are designed very similar to these standards. Local roads are then designed for cars, low traffic volumes. They normally don't have painted center lines. They're narrower lanes, frequent driveways, and generally slower speeds. An important element of the federal classification system is that grant funding is normally reserved for collectors and arterials only. So if a road is declassified to a local road, it will no longer be eligible for federal money for road work and improvements. Any large project that we do on Lemolo Shore will undoubtedly have to be done with the assistance of federal grant funding. In addition to the general grade and curvature of the road, we also look at lane and shoulder widths when doing our study. And as you can see in this chart, the lanes along the corridor are all about 10 feet. 10-foot lanes are about as narrow as we want to go for safety on a collector road. And as I'm sure many of you have noticed, where the shoulders are paved, they aren't very wide, ranging from as narrow as 4 feet to 5 feet. And over half of the road on the eastern end consists of minimal to no shoulders, and they have gravel surface. Another factor we take into account during our study is the development along the route, shown in the chart's last column here. What we do is we count the number of driveways along a route, and with that we calculate the number of approaches per mile. As that number increases, we use that information to adjust speed limit recommendations. With more approaches, there's a higher probability of rear end and turning collisions as people enter and exit their driveways, and then hence slower speeds. Another important part of our study is what traffic is actually doing. We measured traffic at 4 locations as shown in the chart. Those black hoses you see across the road measure volumes of traffic, speeds, and numbers of trucks and types of trucks. The data from the tubes and count equipment breaks the vehicle counts into an hourly basis, so we can tell how much traffic travels in each direction and how fast cars are traveling hour by hour. We often share this information with the sheriff so that they can focus their enforcement efforts during high speeding times of day. The data in this chart is from a study we did in 2020, but I also included the average daily traffic, or the traffic that goes by on the road every day, for 2017, just as a comparison to see what the difference between the COVID-19 traffic was and what we lost during that time frame. All the other numbers, though, in the other columns are all within about 1 mile per hour for both the 2017 and the 2020 study. So I didn't include those. So motorists are pretty much creatures of habit when it comes to driving. The 85th percentile speed is the top speed that captures 85% of the motorists. Historically, this is the number that we traffic engineers use when determining a speed for a road. Federal guidance states that speed limits should be within 5 miles per hour of this speed. The average speed is simply the speeds of the vehicles divided by the number of vehicles. So the 85th percentile speed and the average speed are what we use as our bookends for speed limit setting. To be reasonable and safe, we attempt to keep the posted speed limit below the 85th percentile and at or above the average speed. So all the 35 mile an hour speed limit zones are within these parameters, whereas the 25 mile per hour zone is a little below the average speed. The last column in the chart is what we calculate to see how many higher end speeders there are. This last column shows the percentage of motorists going at least 10 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. I really don't see many roads in our county with numbers this low. So motorists on Lemolo Shore are being fairly good about obeying the speed limit. Even the little higher number in the 25 mile per hour zone is expected since the average speed is higher than the posted limit. I would also like to mention one other item related to traffic volumes, which we captured in 2017. We heard complaints about motorists using the road as a cut through. Well, we looked at the total number of vehicles using the road with these tube counts, and then what we did is we calculated the expected number we would see using the trip generation manual, which is published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. It will tell you how many trips per dwelling unit you would expect to come from a neighborhood. And our findings showed that approximately 100 motorists out of the nearly 1,000 weren't from the local neighborhood. So we think there is about a 10% cut through traffic along Lemolo Shore. This chart shows the number of collisions that have occurred along the corridor in a 5-year period. This data is from 2015 to 2019. This shows only those collisions that were reported by law enforcement. So this won't show those close calls or those unreported collisions that we hear from the neighborhoods. It does show that there were 8 collisions on Lemolo Shore during the study timeframe. Through the years, we do periodic collision reviews of all our county roads, and Lemolo Shore has never risen to a collision frequency that brought it to our attention for a closer look at the collisions. We look at collision type and contributing factors to better understand if there are any collision patterns that might be fixable. In this case, 6 out of the 8 collisions involved alcohol, drugs, inattention, sickness, or driving defective vehicles. So there's not much we can do from an engineering perspective to cut down on those types of collisions. I did look back a little farther than 2015 to see if I could find any pedestrian or bicycle collisions, and I found 2 bicycle collisions, one in 2011 and the other was in 2014. Another challenge that we're going to have with any kind of widening or path construction is the public right-of-way in this area. This map shows the varying width of the right-of-way. So you can see, I just took a portion of Lemolo Shore, and you can see it varies from 30 to 40 to 60 feet. And also another challenging part of this will be that the road itself is not built centered in the right-of-way. So all public facilities such as roads, ditches, shoulders, sidewalks, and trails must be built in the public right-of-way. So purchasing right-of-way for any widening will probably be a necessity, and it could be a significant cost to our projects. So now I'd like to go through some of the options, the alternatives that we brainstormed and also presented in our study, and talk through some of the pros and cons of each. This is not an exhaustive list, and I'm sure there are more pros and cons than what we have listed. And that's part of this tonight's activity, is to get your thoughts and comments on these alternatives, these and others, if you think of others. This first one, the lower speed limit. When residents experience speeding on their roads, one of the first things they ask us to do is reduce the speed limit. Setting a speed limit isn't as easy as simply placing a sign with a number on it alongside the road. There is no set golden rule on how to do it. The guidance from the federal documents simply state what things we are to consider when we recommend a speed limit. And it can be a tough balance establishing a speed limit for the different users of the road, weighing both safety and efficiency. On the positive side of lowering the speed, intuitively, lower speeds result in less forceful impacts. So we can safely say, and studies support, that the severity of collision for both vehicle and pedestrians will be less. There is a popular graphic shown in many studies that shows there is a 90% chance of survival if a pedestrian is hit by a car going 20 miles per hour. The survivability drops to 60% when the vehicle is going 30, and at 40 miles per hour, the pedestrian only has a 20% chance of survival. On the con side, studies throughout the country find that without consistent enforcement or engineering features in the roadway, lower speed limits do not always have the effect the community is after. Our most recent reductions of the speed limit have had little to no impact on the speeds motorists are traveling. Also, if speed limits are set unreasonably low, we are getting complaints of road rage. Motorists are reporting abusive honking and unsafe passing. Alternate 2 and 3 involve moving the yellow center line and or the white edge lines to provide a wider shoulder or pedestrian way on one side of the road. On the eastern mile section of the road, this isn't an option simply because we currently don't have paved shoulders for the traffic to be moved to. Plus, we only have 10-foot lanes that we don't want to narrow for safety reasons. But on the positive side, this would provide for a wider pedestrian travelway, although it would have to be for both directions of travel. It would also put pedestrians on one side of the road only, so motorists' expectations would be to only expect walkers on the one side of the road. One of the challenges, though, we'd have would be it would take away the shoulder for use by other users on one side. Consideration would have to be made for other users of the shoulder, such as mail delivery, garbage pickup, and motorist safety on a shoulderless road in one direction. This would also put bicycles in the travel lane. Another concern we would have to discuss with legal advisors that we would be forcing pedestrians to walk with traffic, and the law states that if there isn't a sidewalk, pedestrians are supposed to walk facing traffic. Most of the cost of doing this option would be in the removal of the existing lines, and this would be minimal. Federal guidance in our Bible, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD, mandates that we obliterate all lines before painting new ones. Simply covering them with paint doesn't meet that requirement. Shared lane markings are markings placed in the travel lane, not on the shoulder, showing where bicycles should ride. These markings could be used with some of the other alternatives that we're going to talk about tonight. The positive attributes for using these is to alert motorists that there may be bicycles in the lane of traffic. And by putting the bicycles in the vehicle lane, this would also reduce conflicts with pedestrians sharing the shoulder. The negative aspects of these markings are that they are not widely known or understood by the public. And on a major collector, they would probably only be used by experienced bicyclists. The use of these devices is governed by the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and they have a placement standard that require them every 250 feet. So 80 markings over the entire route would be roughly about $10,000 for materials. We looked at some closure and one-way options, and I'd just like to briefly go over the cons and pros of these. The pros: closing the road on one end or the other or somewhere in the middle would reduce cut-through traffic. But as we found in our study, there isn't that much cut-through traffic. Making this a one-way road would allow extra pavement from the other lane to be used for other modes of traffic. The cons, one-way roads work best when there is a convenient road nearby that runs in the other direction. Normally they are within a block or two of each other. We refer to these as couplets. The Lemolo Shore area doesn't have a good two-road system. Also, closing or one-way in a road could lead to increased internal traffic with residents using other routes in the area to get to their homes. We did some preliminary work with closures and one-ways and found that some residents on the very ends would have a 3-mile out of direction travel to get headed in the right direction. We would also have to coordinate any of these actions with the emergency responders to see what impacts it would have on their response times. And no matter how many signs we put up, it seems that motorists will drive the wrong way, either willingly or by accident, which can cause a bad collision. As I discussed in a previous slide about federal functional classification, it's not as simple as just declassifying the road. We'd have to change the road so that it didn't actually function as a collector. But the pros in that is if we did that, it would allow us a little more flexibility in what we could do with the road. As a major collector, there are some restrictions on lane width, shoulder width, and other characteristics of the road. By making it a local road, some of those restrictions would go away. On the negative side, though, we would have to change the road physically to stop it from being used as a collector. And the big negative would be that we wouldn't be able to go after federal grant funding to pay for any improvements to the road. Speed humps and tables are a proven traffic calming device. Our current policy is to only use these devices on local neighborhood streets, though. Speed humps and tables are proven to slow traffic, and they can reduce cut-through traffic by discouraging motorists from using the route. The spacing of the devices determines how effective they are. Spaced too far apart, and they allow motorists to speed up and exceed the speed limit. Guidance documents recommend anywhere from 200 to 500 feet apart, and based on those distances, it would cost us probably over $100,000 to put speed bumps throughout the whole corridor. On the flip side, these devices require more time for emergency vehicles to respond. They can be noisy, with vehicles accelerating at each device and the bouncing around of materials in the back of the trucks. And they aren't choosy about who they impact. The speeding traffic and the majority of traffic obeying the speed limit will be forced to maneuver over these devices. And finally, these are very controversial. The most heated community meetings I've attended revolve around the installation of these devices. People like them or they really hate them. Enforcement and education are pretty self-explanatory. Educational information is fairly cheap and easy to get to the public. Enforcement may be the best way to slow down motorists as it targets the specific violators. Unfortunately, we cannot provide educational material, but not everyone will read it, and motorists from outside the area may not even see it. And enforcement resources are limited and probably can't provide the frequent emphasis needed to keep speeds down. Our county road standards require that our collectors be constructed with 11-foot lanes and 6-foot shoulders on each side of the road. This would provide paved shoulders for pedestrian and bicycle usage. And as we showed in a previous slide, right-of-way is very limited in areas, and the road is not in the middle of the right-of-way. So right-of-way would have to be purchased for this option. Also, the deep culverts I mentioned also have to be addressed. And here I've noted both pedestrian and bikes and both the pros and the cons. Even though we are providing shoulders, the non-motorized users would still be right next to the motorized vehicles. This project would undoubtedly be in the $1 million plus range. And this would be a major project that would go into our transportation improvement program and compete against other county priority projects. We'd be looking for any grant opportunities to leverage our funds. And our final alternate is the separated paved non-motorized path, which would be at least 10 feet wide. This would fit well with Paulsbo's city trail plan. It would be separated from cars. This would be a safer environment for pedestrians and bicycles. This alternative would also be in conformance with the Sound to Olympics Trail that I mentioned earlier also. But again, the cost would be very high, in the $1 million plus range. Similar to the previous improvement, we would have right-of-way and stormwater costs to deal with. It would also have to go through our transportation improvement program process. So that includes my presentation. So at this time, I would like to reintroduce Joe Rutan, our Assistant Public Works Director, that is going to go through how we actually got here and some of our next steps in this process. Joe?
Hello, everyone. I'm Joe Rutan. And Irick, you can go ahead and unshare your screen and people can see my face. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this. I was looking at a lot of the questions coming in while that was occurring, and appreciate the engagement. There was a lot of information that we just provided you, a lot of technical information. Some of it may be new to some of you. That's one piece of the puzzle that we all need to understand, and the other piece comes from you folks. We will never understand and know your neighborhood like you do. So we need to have this conversation and we need to listen to you. We're very much hoping that you'll talk with your neighbors about what you learned tonight, what you heard tonight, and that you will engage with your neighbors and feel free to comment later. Don't feel like if you comment tonight, you are done. Once again, work with your neighbors. We will take those comments, we will summarize those, we will glean what we can from them, and we will report back to the community so you can learn hopefully what your neighbors are thinking. And based upon those comments, we can work with you to make some decisions on how to move forward with any options that we need to investigate further, or other things that we can do. So with that, please, if you are not going to comment tonight, send us comments on our webpage. I can tell you that I get a sea of emails, and if I get a letter, a typewritten letter, it goes to the top of the pack. So I got one the other day. And once again, old school sometimes makes an impact. So we're looking for any way to reach out, or we have contact numbers. Feel free to contact us and have a conversation. With that, I will turn it back to Irick.
Great, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. At this point, we're going to go ahead and try to get to some of the questions. I'm seeing 22 questions that have been typed in. And then I see one person with their hand raised. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to start with some of these questions that were typed in order that they came in. So Stephanie, I'm going to turn on the video, Joe.
Yeah, yes, please.
I'm sorry, Jeff. Okay. Okay, Stephanie asked a question with the modification of 305 at Johnson Way and associated detours. The traffic picture along Lemolo Shore Drive has gotten much worse than during your study last fall. Does the county have interim plans to help residents on the drive?
Well, we have talked to the city of Fallsville, and I've got my signal guys looking at some kind of maybe possibly a temporary speed radar. That I know we have the one in one direction, but we don't have one in the other. So we're looking at possibly putting one in that other direction. I think the city was telling me that they have done some new counts. And if Josh or Diane would like to talk about what they're seeing in the city.
Yeah, thanks for that. And so we did just complete updated counts, and we did see a slight increase over what the county did back in September. These counts were just completed here a week ago. They are closer in line with the 2017 numbers that the county was showing with their previous study. I also looked back at our 2015 counts that we had, and they are almost in line with those numbers as well. Our speeds that we were capturing with our counts were in line with what the county was capturing. And I know that one of the questions or comments was in regards to people being able to see the counters or the speed trackers. Ours were a little bit more inconspicuous, mounted on poles, not very visible to the public traveling through there. So they give us a really good idea of what's out there. So we are seeing consistent numbers with the county and consistent numbers with what we've seen over the previous years. But one other thing that we've done here recently is we did install a speed radar sign at the near the southern city limits. So it's something that we continue to monitor as the project moves forward, and we'll go back out and check traffic volumes and speeds again as construction progresses. And we'll be looking at some of the pedestrian and bicycle movement as well along there in the city limits.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, moving on to the next question. It comes from Doug Moraes. Today at 1:30 p.m., my wife and I were walking along Fjord Lemolo Shore Drive path, and a car coming from Fallsville direction crossed the 8-inch wide white line and missed me by a couple feet. And so this is just a comment that it really wasn't a very pleasant moment.
Yeah, but it's a good thing for us to get that information, and you know, we're really well aware that an 8-inch line on the ground doesn't protect pedestrians. Thank you.
Stephanie has mentioned that we need to consider residents that walk and bike along this route, and absolutely that is definitely being considered. Thank you, Stephanie. Suzanne Ballast Book Company. Suzanne at Ballast Book Company, living on Lamalo. She would like to know when the black speed line were on Lamalo and exactly where. I hear and see cars going much higher speeds than the survey shows. I have cars pass me, flash their lights at my car.
The actual speed results that we have are in the study on the website. So you can go in through our website and go to that study, and at the back of it, it actually has the raw data that we collected from the counters.
Thank you, Suzanne, for that question. I'm going to go to, we've got a hand raise for a verbal question here, so bear with me. Find that person. Okay. It looks like Luis Barantas has a question. Luis, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone, and you'll be able to ask a question or comment.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, okay, so page 10 on your document that you were provided a couple of weeks ago, basically you said traffic volume has stayed pretty steady over the last 10 years.
Yes.
There's not really been any significant increase in there. Page 11, you say that the expected versus actual is actually lower. So what is the purpose of this study? What's causing you guys to do all this study, and is it something that related to the 305 changes up there?
In some ways, it is related to 305. You know, we understand that that's going to be a pretty significant change with the roundabout. And right now, they've been approved, WashDOT has, to provide a roundabout at Taunton and Lemolo Shore on that end. So that'll probably cause some changes to the traffic pattern. So we looked at them now prior to the opening of those two projects to see what was going on. But I mean, in the past few years, 3 to 5 years, we've had several complaints about traffic volumes. I mentioned the cut through issue that they had, and speeds, obviously, we've heard that more than once. But it's also the pedestrians and bicycles. We've had a complaint about, bicycles being encroached by cars, a lot, primarily on the eastern end where there's no shoulders. And then the pedestrians encroached, by all we have is a line separating them from the moving traffic. So those are the main reasons that we looked at this.
Okay, so the purpose of the study is to see what might happen now versus when the roundabout comes around?
That's part of it. Plus, it's also looking at current conditions. We would, if money wasn't an object, we'd be building the shoulders left and right. And we
Well, I can tell you right now,
separated trail.
Yeah, I'm at 17212, and I can tell you in the 30 years I've lived there, I've been the victim of 3 major crashes on my property.
Yeah.
And so I know what happens on that road.
Yeah.
And I've had 3 cars on my front lawn. 2 years ago, a car took out my neighbors and my deck on the beach side. So I know there's impacts in there, but
Sure.
I just want to know what prompted this study. It's not just because traffic has changed, because it hasn't.
Right.
So I want to know what's coming in the future. I'm convinced that the 305, in my mind, the 305 roundabout is going to have impacts on Lemolo. So I'm hoping that's what you guys are looking for.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Okay, next question is from Joe. I'm sorry, Joe Vlock has his hand raised. Joe, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone. And whenever you're ready.
Hey, good evening. I just, number one, apologize for the misspelling in the Zoom there. I just wanted to know a couple of overarching process questions of what are the guiding principles and how are decisions being made, and then also a second discussion on, I'm sure you're looking at what grant and what opportunities are available to partner with the tribe. And I'm thinking about the fact that Lamalo is adjacent to Liberty Bay, and we know Liberty Bay is suffering from environmental impact. So I'm just curious about those 2 things. If you can talk about those, Jeff.
Yeah, Joe, those are definitely important impacts. I can tell you that we really haven't got anywhere near that yet in our discussions with our alternatives. We know they're there, and in our groups, with me and I've talked to the director and the assistant director. We're well aware, we have existing environmental issues now, and discussing it with our engineering division, it's not going to get any easier. We've just found out that there's another step that we're going to have to take with another federal agency. So it's going to be a long process, and plus, we got to look at the financial things here. I mean, I have a shop that, one of their primary purposes is looking for grants. And so they're always, they're on a list where they're sent grant opportunities. They're searching for opportunities for grants. We're part of several regional groups that coordinate regional programs and projects, and we help each other out with things like that. So, but as far as the decision process, I mean, this will go to the top. I mean, it always does. Anything of major projects, it shows up on the commissioner's desks, and it's a close coordination with them on something as important and as big as this thing is. Does that help, Joe?
Yep, that helps, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you, Joe, for the question. Okay, we're going to go back to the some of the Q&A type questions. Stephanie mentions that if this road is considered a collector, perhaps the county should reduce the number of approved development proposals for residential property.
We'll take that question. That's out of my realm of expertise. I'm sorry, but we'll definitely take that to the proper department.
Okay, Dave Parker, what is the cut through traffic now that the Johnson Road detour is in place?
I don't have that information. I don't know who is doing any cutting. That's something that we could possibly look into. You know, I have no problem sending my account guy out to put his tubes down and see what they're doing right now. And that's probably a good idea. So we can definitely do that.
Okay. Mike Greenwald asked a question, what prompted this study? And I think this was addressed with, with Joe's question.
Thank you, though.
Linda Berry Marist is asking, did you count pedestrian or bike trips or just cars?
Linda, all we did was cars at this point. I think we're pretty much aware every time that I've ever been out there, there's lots of pedestrians.
Got an anonymous comment that we will take under advisement. Stephanie is asking, garbage pickup already forces traffic to stop during pickup or pass on a double yellow.
True, but one of the problems that we've had where places where we have curb and gutter or we have no shoulders, is where they place the bins. And so we've already had one or two bicyclists hit those bins, and it ended up losing some skin. So we're very sensitive to where people can keep their garbage bins.
Okay, we're going to go over to the verbal questions now. We've got a question from Linda Berry Marist. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Linda, I'm going to unmute your microphone and go ahead and comment or ask a question when you're ready.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for holding this. You know, we have lived down here for almost 30 years, and I can't think of a road in the county that has more bike and pedestrian traffic than Lemolo Drive, Fjord Drive. And during COVID, it has only increased. You know, we see families, kids, training wheels, strollers, you know, all day long. And I certainly know and understand that there is limited right of way and always limited funding. But I would think that it would be really important to really understand the pedestrian traffic and to look for solutions that are bike and pedestrian friendly, because the standard traffic study, you know, the human beings in the road that are protected by the paint stripe really don't count.
I agree, Linda, and you're right. You know, I get one of the benefits of my job is I get to drive around quite a bit, and you know there are a few roads out there that have significant volumes of pedestrians, but Lemolo Shore, at least the eastern portion, has a lot of pedestrians, a lot of them, and you're right. You know, that should be one of the considerations that we have is, you know, with that kind of usage, our improvements would have to have that kind of a focus. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll go back over to some of the Q&A. Stephanie asks, doesn't lowering the speed limit allow for widening the shoulders?
I'm not sure what that refers to, but one of the, you know, one of the things, and this may not be an answer, but this is probably something that we in traffic and public works share quite a bit, is we build the nice road, we bring it up to standards, and then all of a sudden motorists say, hey, here's a nice wide road with wide shoulders, I can drive faster now. And so in some cases, when we've improved the shoulders, we have noticed that traffic feels a little safer. And in some cases, we are seeing some higher speeds on those roads. So.
This is Joe Rutan adding a little something too, and that is speed limits, Jeff mentioned this, people are creatures of habits, and they will drive a road what is comfortable. And it's really surprising how little impact that black on white speed limit side has on driver behavior. We change speed limits and enforce them, and people drive what they drove before. They're a lot more like the deer crossing signs than you imagine. We're telling people that's where the deer are crossing. 25 sometimes is all it's doing is telling the sheriff what he gets to write the ticket for. It has a shockingly limited impact on driver action. Road design and a lot of things that we can do impact that. The technical name for that is called traffic calming. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, we're going to go over to Becky Erickson. She is
Mayor.
Mayor Erickson. Sorry, Mayor Erickson. You're at microphone.
First of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank you guys for putting on this tonight and reaching out, asking the hard questions. Has the county begun to do some true cost estimates to the various scenarios that you outlined out? You know, how much is it going to cost to create a shared use path? You know, how much is it going to cost to the widening necessary to just create pedestrian pathways that are wider without the shared use path? I mean, scenario A, B, and C, have you done costing estimates? And if you haven't, I would help, would you please, so that we can start partnering to make this forward?
No, Mayor, you're way ahead of us. We this is our first shot at even coming up with alternatives. So, we wanted to bring this to the people that live there and experience the roadway and get their thoughts on these ideas before we even proceeded any further. So the numbers that I show up there are just rough estimates. I mean, we're doing some sidewalks. When I was in school a long time ago, we used to cringe at $1 million a mile for the interstate system. And now we're building sidewalks that are more expensive than that. So, the cost of things is just going so high. It's a moving target almost.
Although this is Joe Rutan again, the shoulder widening project has been analyzed as part of our transportation impact program. And I don't have those numbers in front of me, but the reason why it has not raised to the level where it's made it on to the improvement program is the cost associated with it. And once again, we can make those numbers available even in our response to this open house. We'll put that information in there.
Yes.
Perfect.
And Mayor, we can send that to you directly.
Thank you very much. And I have to leave the call. I have another Zoom at 7. But once again, thank you to everybody at the county for putting this on.
Thanks for attending, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, back to the Q&A questions. We've got Stephanie asking, when was the last maintenance done on Lemolo Shore by the county besides replacing?
Oh, I don't have that off the top of my head, but we can certainly find that answer easy enough.
Richard Best, with the number of pedestrians walking on the shoulder of Lemolo Shore Drive between city limits to Johnson Way, is it wise to retain the federal designation of Lemolo Shore Drive as a collector concerning that section of the road?
And that's the one that begs the question, to really do something like that, we'd have to actually change the road itself, because the classification isn't what we classify it, it's how it functions. And as long as it functions, taking people from the city and from 305 to their homes, it will be a collector. But one of the big issues here is, and if you heard our discussion with the mayor, is the cost of some of these improvements is going to be really high. So we really need to be able to search for federal grant funding or even state grant funding to pay for something like that. So, you know, it's kind of a two-edged sword. You do and you don't. You know, it'll be an expensive project that will need leverage funds. Thank you.
Okay, Caroline Parisho, in your collision report, did you include the number of cars that had driven over the bank into the bay?
The report that I looked at didn't show me exactly what happened, just the type of collision that happened. So no, I don't have that number that went into the bay.
Thank you for the question, Caroline. Ty Rogers, I moved here approximately 20 months ago. Can you say what the problem is that the group is looking to solve? Speeding or too many cars?
Yeah, I think we talked about that. It's you know, we have gotten the speeding complaints, you know, and right now we're getting the too many cars. There's a perception that may actually be at reality that people are trying to bypass the construction. So we'll check into that. But it's not only the cars, but it is the pedestrians and bicycles also.
We've got a question from a James Harris. What about digital speed signs which alert motorists how fast they're going?
Well, we have the one on Lemolo Shore already, and we may be able to dig up another one for the other direction of traffic, but we wouldn't necessarily put it on a residential road like Tukwila or Delate. Normally, we use the speed radar signs on the arterial type of roads where we don't have the option of putting on a speed hump or a speed table.
Okay, we've got an anonymous question. How are you planning to address the land erosion occurring on the bay side of the road into your overall plan?
That's going to be one of those major challenges that we're up against on any one of these options that we're looking at where there's some major construction. So I don't know right now, but it definitely will be into consideration.
Question from Catherine Calvert. What is the anticipated longer-term impact on traffic volumes on Lamalo once the roundabout at Peterson is completed?
I don't know that one for sure yet. Hopefully it won't increase too much. You know, I'm not sure that people will get off there that couldn't have gotten off already. So we'll have to wait and see and report in on that.
Got a question, another anonymous question. There's a critical issue with cars exceeding speed limits. Nighttime is worse. Have you factored those numbers into your averages?
Yes, the speed report that you could find in the study, it breaks down the speeds by the hour. So we can tell exactly what time the speeding took place. And like I said in our study, you know, we have very good relationship with the sheriff's department's deputies that work our patrol, and we'll give them these studies, and they can go into those studies and find out the hours where most of the speed is occurring. That way they don't have to sit there for hours. They can just sit there during those times, which is very productive for them.
Okay, Paula Gritzmacher is asking, the city of Fallsville wants to partner with the county on improvements, but this doesn't seem to be a priority for the county. How long should the city wait?
I'm not sure I understand. I'm not sure why, you know, we'd be reluctant. I guess, you know, we've had pretty good discussions with the city. You know, it just may be a matter of who has the funding to do something. But you know, one of the things that we look at, or what's measured as far as the competition criteria in several of our grants, is that you know, the grant issuers are like it when we actually work alongside a partner in our area. So that would only improve our probability of getting any kind of grants if we work with another agency. Okay.
Thank you, Paula.
Hey, Jeff, Andy here. If I can comment on that as well. I think, you know, we're working closely with the city of Fallsville, and, you know, we're going to look at Lemolo Shore Drive as various segments. And, you know, there's opportunities to do things in different parts of Lemolo Shore Drive in conjunction with the city's efforts to, you know, improve segments as that goes together, you know. So that segment from Johnson Way that goes to the city limits is an obvious, you know, area that can be coordinated with a city project as a standalone, okay?
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, we've got a question from Nate. Why is Lamalo striped with double line some parts and passing others? East of Johnson is striped for passing in a 25-mile-an-hour zone.
Our striping requirements come from, remember I mentioned that manual and uniform traffic control devices. It not only is it a guide for us, it's the state law states that we're mandated to follow that manual. And so in that manual, it tells us how we're supposed to stripe city streets with the yellow no passing or passing zones. And so in there, well, it's simply a matter of checking how far you can see. And if you can see far enough, then we discontinue the no passing stripe. Yeah, you know, this isn't the first time this question's been asked. It's a tough one. You know, should we restrict passing? You know, then the question becomes, where do you do it and where don't you do it? And one of the things in the manual, it requires us to do a significant study in why we allow passing and create a no passing zone, even though you have the passing zone. Because one of the problems is that if you put up the double yellow and it's clear, some of these people that don't obey all the laws will actually pass in those areas. And that can be even more troublesome than if you allow passing and they know where the zone is wide enough for them to get around somebody. So, long answer to it.
Thank you, Nate. Ty Rogers, what is the ratio of pedestrians versus cars on the road? Asking because, are you trying to solve a walking problem or a driving issue? Can the walkers go elsewhere with less overall impact to the total area?
No, I don't have a good percentage. I do know that there's approximately 2,000 cars go by there a day, and I doubt if there's 2,000 people that walk down there every day. So there's probably significantly more cars than pedestrians, but you know, it's one of those things in the transportation. We try to accommodate all modes of transportation. Pedestrians and bicycle driving is one of those. So that's in our realm to try and do.
Thank you, Ty. Elise Golson, the raw data that was collected along the Lemolo Shore for the traffic speed, I believe, was over the weekend. How accurate is that? And I believe in our area, which is Holman going east, it was only up for 3 days.
I'd have to go look exactly at the date, but normally what we do is we don't take counts unless we want the weekend counts. But generally the highest and most normal traffic is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So my guess is we took these counts in the middle of the week, because that's generally when you have your higher traffic, unless you're, you know, near a park or something, it gets heavier traffic on the weekends. But so I'm fairly confident that we have a pretty accurate count. And like I mentioned in my presentation, that motorists are pretty much creatures of habit. I look at reports all the time, the speed reports, and what I find is even 4, 5, 6, 10 years later, when I look at the same road, the speed chart the speed graph, they're almost identical. So people really are creatures of habit. And even though we only do 1, 2, or 3 day count, it's pretty accurate each day, you know, with the speeds and the number of vehicles.
Thank you for that question, Elise. Timothy Steege, the only place I always feel unsafe walking on Lamalo is at the 90-degree curve heading west on the inside curve against traffic. Would it be possible to fix that section first?
We'll take that consideration. Thank you.
Doug Marius, the Johnson Way Tunnel will increase pedestrian and bike traffic along Lemolo Shore Drive as it connects the North Kitsap schools and Knoll Road neighborhoods. Can the county plan ahead with future funding to proactively address these increases?
That's exactly why we're here. Thank you for that question. So, you know, that's why we came up with the alternatives that we did.
And Barbara Short is asking how many Lemolo residents are on the call. Thanks. Barbara, I can tell you that the number of attendees on the call, and that's excluding panelists, we were up to at one point, I think up to 82. Whether or not those are Lemolo residents, we can't say for sure, but I can tell you we had up to 82 attendees. Dave Parker, thanks for holding the meeting. Traffic is up significantly, making pedestrian experience even more harrowing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Bricklin, the ground on Fjord is cracking and eroding on the waterfront side. Additional traffic and increased speeds create an additional danger. What studies have been done to ensure we are not going to be looking at landslides with the changes in weather?
I don't have the specific answer to that, but I will certainly pass that on to our maintenance division. Thank you.
Anonymous question, have you considered a cut-through detour impact added to the one-way on Fjord? Okay, so it's one-way on Fjord as it has impacts to 6th Avenue.
No, we've just looked specific at Lemolo Shore in the county section. Josh and Diane might be able to add some more to that.
Yeah, Jeff, I can just add that we have been monitoring our section, and the traffic pattern that we're currently seeing is consistent with what we had pre-COVID in terms of volumes on the city section. And so far, everything's been going well on 6th Avenue, but we are monitoring it.
Thanks, Ann.
Mr. Paul Nash, thank you for communicating with us. The county has been responsive. Hopefully there will be a solution that improves safety. Thank you for that comment.
Thanks, Paul.
Nash. John Bukowski, it's a 3-part question. What the study does not consider are the individuals. Actually, these are more comments in their questions. So I'm going to go down to an anonymous question. How does the Lemolo Shore community leverage funds?
If you're referring to what I refer to as far as leveraging, Joe has what is called the road fund, and the road fund is made basically up of 2 types of monies. One's the property taxes and the other is the motor fuel tax. And with that, that money is what we use to do all of our maintenance and our operations, and it includes what we do for our major projects. And so when we're talking about leveraging funds, what we're talking is trying to minimize our own funds and get us the highest grant opportunity funds that that come from federal or state sources, and then marry those up with our fewer funds to fund these bigger projects. Joe? Anything to
Yeah,
add?
I'll add in a little bit. That's an excellent question. Not only do we need to leverage our local dollars with federal and state money to make them go further, but you know, community, especially community-driven projects or projects that our community is interested in, you know, I have been very successful with communities doing projects, and the one thing that they all have in common is they are consistent, and you have to be somewhat patient. Even the easiest, simplest project where we have to obtain any right-of-way or permits or get on the transportation improvement program, you know, the simplest of those will take 3 to 5 years. So, you know, a road reconstruction project, by the time you are designing it, permitting it, shopping it for funds, redesigning it based on changes since you designed it a few years ago, and then permitting requirements, it can be a long haul, but that makes it even more of a sweeter that when we're done. So I appreciate that. Yes, we need to be very cautious about leveraging funds, and granting agencies like to see lots of boxes checked. So, you know, one of the things that we'd be addressing when doing this, not only is safety for pedestrians, but those 2 culverts are fish passage. So those would be fish passage improvements. So it's another access to funds there. So stay engaged.
Thank you, Joe. Willa Fisher, there are no shoulders for walking on Lemolo down near 305 intersection. When WashDOT does the roundabout project at Lemolo Cotton, can you consider adding some walking shoulders?
WashDOT is the design agent and the builder on this one, so we won't have a lot of say, but I guarantee you that we will push as hard as we can for shoulders extending as far down Lemolo Shore as they will allow.
Thank you, Will. Linda Berry Morace, can you provide the best way to provide additional input? I understand at some point there was a survey, but I was unable to locate that online. Who do we send input and suggestions to? Linda, at the end of this presentation, I'm going to put up a slide that has a link to our project page for this traffic study, and on that page is a form where you can submit comments, questions, and submit those to us. So I will show that at the end of the presentation. Joe Block, is there also an interim safety mitigation to clear brush, limbs, and trees on the roadway? The blind corner just past Peterson, pictured in your study, is an area that pedestrians cannot walk or run against traffic with a reasonable line of sight.
Joe, I'll pass that on to our road superintendent and his foreman or his shop supervisor up there and see what they can do.
Carol, has anyone counted the numbers of bikers on all days?
No, unfortunately not yet.
Deborah Wyman, what is county's priority speed, which based on the study is not a problem, or non-motorized safety? I think that's the question she's asking. Yes.
Well, like I said, setting a safe speed it's a difficult thing to do, you know, because we have to look both at safety and efficiency. You know, if it was purely safety, we wouldn't have a road over 20 miles per hour in the county, but we can't do that. And so getting that balance is really a tough matter. I can tell you right now that the state is looking at that in their what they're calling their injury minimization study. Right now, the main focus is on urban type settings, urban roads. You may have been aware of what Seattle did, lowering a bunch of their roads in their town, in the city, excuse me. So, you know, we're probably going to see some more stuff as far as how to set speed limits in the near future.
Thank you for the question, Deborah. Nate is asking, what are the chances that speed tables similar to 6th Avenue and Paulsbo could be placed between Johnson and the city limit?
Lemolo Shore could be placed between, I assume, on Lemolo Shore. Since it's a collector, an arterial type of road, we would really not consider tables on that road. So unless there was some other type of traffic calming, tables would be very last, if not just not considered on Lemolo Shore.
Okay, we've got a question from Bricklin. Can we get a readout of the speeds and timelines? I would like to see these reports. Experience living on Fjord, cars are going much faster than 25 miles per hour. Walking traffic is increasing significantly. Drivers have started honking at walkers. Pass wide. Drivers are not yielding to pedestrians. What is the plan to manage this issue?
The speeds and timelines will be in that study. So
yes, yes. The study is. I will put up a slide at the end of the presentation that will have a link to the traffic study where all the speed and timelines will be are documented.
And you know that's our whole expectation here is to hear from you on how to manage this issue. So as Joe mentioned, we'll be gathering all these comments together, categorizing them, and then coming up with what our final solution will be, or interim, or both.
Okay, question from Brian. Once the Johnson Way roundabout is finished and with the sidewalk going down to Lemolo Shore Drive, will there be improvements made for pedestrian traffic crossing Lamalo at the base of Johnson?
Yeah, Brian, that is an excellent question, and we've brought it up. Currently, we're still in discussion phases. We definitely see that need, since and it all depends on which side of the road the pedestrian walkway or whatever is developed is on. So yeah, that's a great question. Thank you.
An anonymous question: does your traffic accident count include portion of Lamalo inside the city limits of Fallsville?
No, it doesn't. The state doesn't share any of the collision data with us other than the county data.
Paul Nash is asking what next steps are. Is there a timeline to come up with a solution?
Not a hard timeline, but and Irik's going to mention this. We're going to probably leave the website up for another couple of weeks, so that the people that have listened to this presentation have a time or an opportunity to go in there and maybe offer comments. And at that point, depending on what our solution is, if we find a good solution, that'll dictate, how long it'll take to implement that. So I'm sorry that's not a very good answer, but right now that's about the best I can do.
Bob Rosenblatt, you have mentioned 2 streams that go under Lamalo, but I'm aware of 3 between Tukwila and Totten. Which 2 are you considering?
This is Joe. My understanding, it is the southernmost 2, and it's because of their depth. The northern one is a little more shallow and not nearly as expensive.
Thank you, Joe. Elise Golson is asking, how about some short-term solutions while 305 is under construction, slower speed, which is only a few miles?
We can consider something. We can put our heads together. As we mentioned, slower speeds, that's a hard thing to accomplish. But like I said, we'll try to find another radar sign if we can. Yeah, we'll along with the city, we'll continue to monitor what the traffic is doing while it's under construction.
And Stephanie has a comment, only hope to have a follow-up meeting when you have more information.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Thank you, Stephanie, for that. Okay, at this time, we do not have any other questions, and I am going to share the screen again and include the links to the information that I was referring to. Whoops, sorry. Okay, so the web page is, the link is down here. It's http://kcowa.us/Lemolo page. On that page, you can download the traffic study, and you can also submit questions via our form that we have embedded in that page. So please feel free to visit that page for more information and more details. As I was speaking, it looks like we had another question come in. Okay.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you.
Elise, I was not talking about the speed where it is 35, not 25. Or I was talking about the speed where it's 25. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, Elise. Great. And I don't see any further questions or comments at this time. Definitely would like to thank everyone for joining us. We had a great turnout of participants on this call. So thank you very much for joining us. Two more questions are popping in here. Thank you. Appreciate the information.
Speed tables. Noted.
Yeah, we thank you, C. Hattrick. We've noted that in an earlier comment. Robert Michaels, would it be reasonable to consider preventing motorized traffic past Brower? It could force cut-through traffic headed to Fallsville to use Johnson Way to get to Lamalo, where the road is wider. With the reduced motorized traffic south of Johnson Way, where the road narrows, would make it a bit safer for bike and pedestrians. Locals could still access Fallsville via Brower and Tukwila.
That's one of the cut-through things that we really have to look at the dead ends that we'd have to look at really closely. Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. Okay, at this time, I don't see any other further questions, and I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Again, thank you everybody for joining us. Have a great evening, and we look forward to continuing our communication on this this important traffic area up near Fallsville.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.